Hello, I'm Bruce Silver of BPM Essentials and developer of this course. Let me tell you a bit more about it. BPMN is far and away the predominant diagramming notation used for business process modeling, but you still occasionally hear people say it's too hard or too hard for business people. That's a myth. It's not true. And usually the people saying this have some vested interest in their own legacy proprietary notation. But I will admit the world is full of bad BPMN, diagrams that are unclear, incomplete, or that make no sense at all. Often they simply disregard the meaning of the shapes and symbols as defined in the specification. But even if the BPMN is technically correct, the modeler's intent may not be clear from the diagram, defeating the entire purpose of a process modeling notation standard. In this class, you're going to learn how to create good BPMN. That is, not only correct, but BPMN that communicates clearly. It's a learnable skill. It's not too hard for business people. The training will teach you everything you need to do it. It does not require a technical background. Good BPMN, in fact, is a common process language that bridges business and IT. It does demand a disciplined approach and attention to detail, reinforced in the training through a methodology and validation rules built into the tool. I have been doing BPMN training since 2007, and today BPM Essentials is the worldwide leader in BPMN training and certification. Since we started, the BPMN spec has gone from version 1.0 to 1.1, 1.2, and now 2.0, and the training has evolved along with it. What used to be taught as best practices has evolved into a more prescriptive methodology and associated rules that we call the method and style approach. I served on the technical committee in OMG that drafted the BPMN 2.0 standard. And when the BPMN 2.0 beta came out in 2009, I wrote a book to explain it using this method and style approach, and later a second edition based on the final spec. The training teaches you how to use the method and style approach to improve your own process models. In this class, we assume you begin with perfect information about how the process works. The objective is to be able to communicate that information clearly to others through a BPMN diagram. That, after all, is BPMN's real purpose. Specifically, this course will teach you how to create good BPMN, models that you can share across your organization with confidence that others will understand their meaning from the printed diagram alone. Good BPMN begins with correctness, according to the BPMN 2.0 spec. But the most important rules of BPMN are actually implicit and outside the range of tool validation, such as this one. Each activity in a process must be aligned one-to-one with the process instance. Probably the #1 failure of most BPMN models in the wild, and we'll talk about it a lot in the training. Good BPMN also means the process logic is clear from the printed diagram alone, without reference to attached documentation or information available to users of the modeling tool. Good BPMN means the model reveals at a glance how the process starts, the various ways it could end, both successfully and unsuccessfully, the meaning of the process instance, and all interactions with the customer, service providers, and other processes. Good BPMN also means diagrams created consistently across the business. Given the same set of facts about how the process works, all modelers ideally should create the same diagram or same diagram structure. That's the goal. And finally, good BPMN means diagrams that can be shared between the business and IT, or more specifically, between the business analyst and the software architect or process engineer. This means you need to go beyond learning the vocabulary of BPMN, simply the meaning of the various shapes and symbols. Obviously that's important, but it's nowhere near enough. Good BPMN requires additional methods and conventions, constraints, rules, however you want to say it, that help you comply with the implicit rules of the spec, and then go beyond those rules of the spec. We call it BPMN method and style, and you'll learn it in this class. In the training, you're going to get three things. First, the vocabulary, the meaning of the shapes and symbols. We're going to focus first on a simple working set, the level 1 palette, mostly familiar from traditional flowcharting, but describing certain exception behaviors, such as what to do if an activity takes too long or the customer changes an order in flight, require a larger palette, level 2, which is especially important for describing event-triggered behavior. And the rest of BPMN, trust me, you will never need. We'll show you the parts of the notation that are important and which parts you can safely ignore. Second, you will learn a step-by-step methodology for creating well-structured process models in a top-down manner. This is key to achieving structural correctness and consistency in your models. Third, you'll learn the elements of BPMN style, essentially rules that ensure your meaning is clear from the diagram. As with any language, you can't really become fluent simply by lectures or reading a book. You need to use the language yourself. So we use a BPMN tool in class to do exercises as we go, and you'll have access to it for 60 days for use in a post-class certification. Certification is a two-step process after completion of the training. The first is passing an online multiple-choice test. Only 10 questions, but you need 8 right to pass. 3 chances to pass, and once you pass, you go on to the real part of the certification, the mail-in exercise. Here you'll create a BPMN model using the method and style structure and approach and meeting certain criteria. You email it to me, and I personally review it. If it's not perfect the first time, which is usually the case, I will point out the problems and suggest how to fix them and ask you to resubmit. Most students pass on the second or third iteration. Just because the meaning of a BPMN diagram is independent of the tool doesn't mean all BPMN tools are the same. This class uses 2 of the best. Both have full support for BPMN 2.0 and, more important, have the method and style validation built right in. The first is Process Modeler for Visio from ITP Commerce, an add-in to Microsoft Visio. And the other is a cloud-based BPMN editor from Signavio, which runs in a web browser. With either tool, you get 60 days use of the tool as part of the training, and you can upgrade to full license later on. These 2 tools are the best, but private classes also have the option of native Visio 2010 Premium or Visio 2013 Pro. The training is offered in a variety of delivery formats. If you have 15 or more, Live on Site is a 2-day class delivered by me at your site. These are usually private classes, and they are the best for live user interaction. Also, we can add an optional workshop at the end tailored to your work in progress. Live Online is good for individuals and small teams. It's live but delivered over the internet. Large distributed teams use this as well. The least expensive is Web on Demand, recorded flash video that you take at your own pace. The content is the same regardless of the format, as are the exercises and post-class certification. The difference is basically in the quality of live interaction. Here's the outline for the course. In Part 1, we briefly discuss what BPMN is, why it is worth the effort to learn, and how it is similar to and different from traditional flowcharting. Part 2 is hands-on with the tool, in which we build up a process model step by step, explaining the meaning and use of the shapes in the Level 1 palette. In Part 3, we go into more depth on the real meaning of BPMN's most basic concepts: process, activity, instance, and end state, which many modelers fail to understand. And that lets us reduce what we did in Part 2 to a formula, the method, a cookbook recipe for creating good BPMN in a consistent way. We follow that with an introduction to BPMN style, basic rules of BPMN usage beyond what is required by the spec to ensure that your process logic is clear from the diagram alone. We do all this using a basic working set of shapes and symbols called the Level 1 palette. In the live 2-day training, we get through Part 4 on the first day. Then we move on to Level 2, a larger set of shapes and symbols. In Part 5, we cover events with a focus on the big 3, timer, message, and error events. There are other types, but there is rarely a need to go beyond these 3. After that, we talk more about the branching and merging patterns you can do using gateways, beyond the simple patterns we use in Level 1. Part 7 deals with iteration, performing an activity more than once, or sometimes performing a process more than once, a critical but neglected area of process modeling, since batching in various forms is a commonplace feature of real business processes, but tricky to handle in BPMN. In Part 8, we talk about the rules of BPMN and how to use model validation. And finally, in Part 9, we'll talk more about the post-class certification exam and exercise and avenues for further learning. BPM Essentials offers a full curriculum of BPM training, not just BPMN. You see the courses listed here, and they're all described on the BPM Essentials website. What makes our training different from BPM training offered by others is, first, each course is developed and delivered by recognized experts in the specific field. As we say, why learn from someone who read a book when you can learn from the person who wrote the book? Second, each course is designed to give you practical skills you can apply yourselves. They're not teasers for an engagement in which the instructor's company does it for you. Third, the courses are aligned in content and complementary. They don't contradict each other, but are mutually reinforcing. Fourth, they're all hands-on with tools and exercises in class. You can't learn this stuff just from a lecture. And most important, each class includes post-class certification. This is where you really internalize the learning. For anything you do in BPM, BPMN has become the critical foundation skill. So why don't you learn to use it the right way? I look forward to meeting you in class.